Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you all for coming tonight to hear our presentation on planning for the future of Cheltenham's facilities. I'm Allison Elliott and the Township Manager. Before we get started tonight and I introduce Rick, Drew, and Eric, I just want to give you, as Commissioner Norris had started off, just a little overview of what to expect this evening. Tonight's presentation is a summary of a lot of the work that's been done over the past 6 to 9 months, almost a year since we started this project. We intended at the very beginning of this project, which started last summer, to have this presentation at the end of 22. But as with all things, we had a lot of change in the township, so we've had to kind of take a little bit more of our time to work through this and other issues with the township. But this is still a very important project for the township. And we've taken a lot of time to take what we've heard from the community, from staff, from the board, to see how we can make it work with what available resources we may have. Tonight's presentation is a presentation of concepts. This is not anything near final. So what you'll see tonight is kind of a lot of us working through the challenges of the township's properties, throwing them up on the wall, seeing what sticks and what makes sense before we bring it all to you. Like I said, this is definitely not a final end product. There's still a lot of work to be done going forward. This is, I think we are looking at this as a really great opportunity to look at the township facilities and plan for the future. And what will this township look like in the future? How are we going to be able to provide the best services to you all and our future residents? So we ask you to keep an open mind tonight. Like I said, the board has not made any decisions. They are considering all the options just like you will be. We will provide you with opportunity at the end of this meeting to ask questions and provide comments, but we're also going to extend a 30-day comment period to you all, so that by the end of August, we'd like to give you the opportunity to review the presentation, which will be posted on our website and YouTube channel, and digest it and think about it and tell us what you think and what you like and how you'd like to see us grow our facilities or build our facilities moving forward for the future of the township. So we do have a slide that'll give you the information of where to find this presentation on our website, and also an email address where you can send your comments to us for consideration. We probably won't be able to answer some of your questions, or maybe all of your questions, or most of your questions tonight. So we will be logging them. And as we can, we'll put together like a frequently asked questions and post it on our website with the best answer we can. So like I said, we will be taking your information, providing it to the board, along with a lot of other things that we still need to do. And there'll be public discourse from the board going forward as they, figure out how the best way to move forward with facilities will be. So this is still early on in the process, and there's still plenty of opportunity for public comment and review along the way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew, Eric, and Rick, the architects who've been diligently working on this project, to present to you some really interesting ideas and thoughts for our future of our facilities.
Thanks, Allison. Rick, can you pull this slide up? Thanks, Rick. You probably should need to go to the next slide. It'll have the information that Allison was talking about for everybody to see where the this PowerPoint will be posted on the township's website, and the email address for the comments. I take it everybody can see that now? Maybe a couple of head nods would be good. All right, excellent. Let's go ahead and go into the next slide. So we want to kind of go over a brief introduction of our team and kind of go over some of our objectives today to review our agenda. So we wanted to talk about our objectives for the study. We wanted to talk about the facility assessments, which a lot of that's been done on prior meetings with the township, but I believe that is hosted on the township's website. So we're not going to go into a lot of that, but we'll kind of go over a 5,000-foot level of those assessments. And then we're going to look at some proposed options that come from those assessments. And then finally, we'll be looking at the financial summary as well as some discussion items. So I'd like to first start with the introductions. Go ahead and go to the next slide. My name's Eric Gianelli. I'm a principal at KCBA. I've been practicing architecture for just shy of 40 years. I've been a township resident. It'll be my 30th year in 2 years. And I've been in Abington for another 8 years. So I've been local to the area for a long time. I am an expert in municipal type projects and these type of studies. We currently worked in Abington, Upper Moreland, Montgomery Township, Horsham. I mean, just recently. So I believe my expertise will help our township. Rick? You may have to unmute, Rick. Drew?
All right, sorry about that. My mouse is giving me difficulties. So yeah, I'm Rick Stamper. I've been an architect for over 25 years, and I'm just glad to be able to help out on this project. And I'm excited for what lays before Cheltenham Township here in terms of opportunity.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Drew Levine. I'm a partner at Revision Architecture. We're an architecture and sustainable design consulting firm. I'm also, like Eric, I'm a township resident. I've been living here since 2012. We've got 2 kids in the school district. Really excited to be able to work with the community, and this team to kind of envision the future of our township. So very happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Thanks, Drew. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Rick. So the objectives, so we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, Rick. So we want to talk a little bit about these objectives that we were looking for in the study. We obviously wanted to take a look at the existing facilities, how they are aging, how they're doing. Is the program working for the township? Is it working for the residents? Is it working for our visitors, and as well as our faculty? And then we also want to look at the investment, the fiscally strategic way, how those funds can be used within the township. And we also want to look at, providing a first-class facility for our residents and the taxpayers as a part of the study, while reinforcing and encouraging sustainable and resilient, ideas, and along with our resilient community. Go ahead, Rick. So it's a part of assessing, reviewing the existing aging of the facilities. We're looking at how they maintained and incremental improvements. And how they're, some of these facilities have been adaptively reused. Our township building is one of them. It was originally a state, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but you can see that our township has done a good job of adaptively reusing facilities for a long time. We're going to look at options for reconstruction, renovations, as well as repairs in those costs. And in terms of the fiscal strategy, we're going to be identifying the money pits, buildings that you'll spend a lot of money to maintain, and they may not be providing that worth, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And in some of those, we might be recommending to divest them from our township. Reduce facility and service redundancies. And then going back to providing that first-class facilities to meet the functional needs and the programmatic needs of our township and our community. And operate the facilities that are competitive with other municipalities, and plan for future changes in our community. And attract and retain residents. It's key for our tax base. and ensure Cheltenham maintains its valued historic identity. And again, back to our sustainable and resilient community, we want to maintain and celebrate our neighborhoods and our identities through which our community is centered. And using facilities to make opportunities for residents to engage those in other neighborhoods. And then integrate holistically and sustainably cost-effective solutions in a meaningful way. And ultimately to create spaces and places to meet diverse needs of our residents in our community. So the study's kind of, it wraps around a lot. So, you know, like Allison says, please be patient. There's a lot of information here. We hope to kind of cover all these things as we kind of go through there.
So just to give everyone a quick overview of the scope of the study, hopefully we're all familiar with the map of the township here. We just wanted to point out what's in the scope. Next slide, Rick. So the township has a lot of property. Everyone's probably familiar with this. There's green space, there's buildings, there's properties. We're not looking at all of this. This is beyond the purview of the study. We're really focusing in on a select group of buildings and locations. Rick, if you could go to the next slide. So within the scope of the study, we got a couple of areas. And so looking over in Glenside, we have the Glenside Pool, Memorial Hall, and the Glenside Library. In Elkins Park, we've got the police station, the EMS building, the Township Administration building, and the tax assessor office. We also have Public Works and the Elkins Park Library. We're looking at the Lamont Community Center, Conklin Pool, and over in East Township, we're looking at Roland Library, Roland Community Center, the Shovel Shop, and the Community Arts Center. And so when we think about all of these facilities and the solutions, it's really a very broad spectrum. And so on one end, we have maintaining and repairing our existing facilities, and at the other opposite pole, we've got the, building a central campus, and we have lots of solutions in between. And so one solution is adaptive reuse. And so this is where we take an existing building, we renovate it, we modernize it, we may expand it in the process. We also have reconstruction. So we may look at something and say, this is not worth adapting. So we would demolish it and rebuild the facility in the same location. And then we have a lot of options in between there. A lot of hybrid options that would involve both adaptive reuse and new construction. And in all of these scenarios, there, as Eric mentioned earlier, we may be looking at divestment for unused, underused properties, places where we've relocated the program, or properties which have problems which we just can't sustainably handle. So we want to jump into this hybrid options for a sec. How are we going to evaluate all of these solutions? And there's lots of different lenses that we're going to look at to say, is this a good thing to do? Is it worth doing? We're going to look at the construction cost. This is the direct first cost for something. Then we're going to look at the operating cost. That's how much we will need to spend over time on every individual facility. This is going to range from our utilities to our maintenance and our upkeep and future renovations. Time is a critical component to look at within all of this. We won't want to discount that in the criteria for evaluation. Health and safety, this is a very important thing for all of us. Community development, do these solutions reinforce our community identity and the goals that we have for our community? Resilience, how does this build our community resilience? I think that we're all experiencing this in one way or another this summer with the weather that we're having. And then also sustainability. This is a core value of our community. It's one of the reasons I'm so proud to live here in Cheltenham. It's absolutely something that we'll be evaluating all of the design solutions on. Eric, you're muted.
Thank you. Technology. So, the second part of our agenda was to take a look at these facilities. Again, I'm going to briefly go through these. A lot of our facilities, go ahead and go to the next slide. A lot of our facilities have been repurposed, and that'll be we'll going through, and some of the challenges that it creates as you look at renovating, because you have to come into full compliance, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So we're going to take a look at the emergency services, as long with the township in the municipal complex. Keep going, Rick. And then we're going to dive into the community facilities. So we're going to look at Lamont, Roland, and Glenside as well. And then we'll look at the public works. And then we're going to dive into the libraries, and then some others, the shovel shop and some of the other ones, as well as the pools in the end. To start with the municipal complex, the police. The police is undersized. It needs some space in there, but that provides some challenges here. If you guys know where the police building is, it's landlocked on two sides. It's right on the property line, and it's right at a hard spot where you're coming into that campus where, like, my daughter was 17 years old at one point, has to drive in there. She worked for the EMS. And she's got to make a left-hand turn swooping in there, and maybe there's a police activity going on, and it's a real tough intersection. So we believe that, go ahead and go to the next slide, that it's really impractical to expand the police and keep the vehicular movement on that campus in a safe manner, and that we're going to recommend that building be raised and relocated onto some other site. The EMS, this building is structurally unstable as it is. It's got a lot of temporary supports in there, and the current ambulances do not necessarily fit in the complex. So there's really no way to save this. You just can't take the building and raise the roof and fix it that easily. So this is another instance where we're going to recommend to raise that facility and relocate it. The administration building. Now, this is a beautiful historic facility. It's just a cherish, and it was an estate, and this is where the challenge becomes when we start to try to renovate or expand on an estate. It's wood framed. It doesn't have the structural loads of the current code requirements, and thusly, the township has been trying to fit offices into the old parlor and to other rooms that were in that estate. The bedrooms were converted into offices, bathrooms were converted. So they, over that long period of time, they've done a great job of utilizing that space. But going forward, giving the different floor elevations, that it complicates the ability to renovate it for ADA access. Thusly, you'd have to have multiple lifts or elevators in there. And then bringing it up to code structurally, it's just going to be cost prohibitive, and it's going to be another facility that we're going to ask the commissioners to consider to raise and to relocate. But given its historic flavor, we'd love to take some of the features of that building and reuse it on whatever that project might be. Go ahead. And over at the Public Works, right now that site is partially in a floodplain. And my biggest concern in this particular Public Works is if we do get that 100-year flood, which you all know we tend to get those every 10 years, if not sooner, is that I have salt sitting in that yard. We got diesel tanks, we got oil, we got fertilizer. And the last thing our community needs is a little bit of a disaster if it does get hit with a flood, and we get that into our creeks and have that going downstream. That does have some vehicular concerns on that campus. If anybody's been there to drop off something, you're basically coming right in where the trucks are coming in and out. It's, we're all safe and everything like that, but it doesn't make a good transition. So there's some adequate or inadequate situations at the site that can't easily get fixed, given its limitations on its site. And this is going to be a facility in the long-term plan. We would recommend to find another home for it to get it out of that floodplain and provide future growth. Lamont. So we're going to get into the community facilities. Lamont's another terrific historic facility. We'd love to see this thing get renovated. It has some issues with its mechanical systems. The lower level has moisture issues, and there's a lot of ADA issues down in that lower level, not just for the wheelchair, but it's even somebody like me where you're walking around, there's pipes where I can run my forehead into. It's just, there's just things that can be very difficult. So we're going to recommend that get renovated, but move a lot of the program that's in that lower level out and let that be mechanical and or storage, and to kind of bring that building back to life, to restore the upper level back to what it could be, and help provide some more community spaces for the township. Roland. Roland was a series of 2 buildings with 2 additions. The original building was the old 4 square. If any of you guys are old enough to remember what that looked like, it's on the back part of that building where you have 4 classrooms in the corner. It's 3 stories tall. And then you have a newer addition out across the front where the current library is. The newer addition is actually in good shape. We believe that can be restored and made ADA compliant, relatively cost effectively. But the original 4 square, we believe the township could be burdened with significant costs to maintain that each year. You have to budget it for the walls. Some of those walls are bowing. If anybody understands, bowing on a wall is not a good sign. There's some significant costs in there. So we're gonna recommend to remove that old schoolhouse, but then refurbish the original building so that there's a nice community space and maybe some library space, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then at Glenside, I remember going here and having parties, I guess, back when we were in Legion baseball and having our year-in parties in this facility. So this one has a little soft spot in my heart, but it has some structural issues. The lower level slabs are in trouble. There's ADA access concerns here. And then this really comes down to a programmatic need for the township. It is a kind of a banquet hall, and it's maybe not utilizing it. So it's an item that we'd have to discuss about how that's, what to do with that. Ultimately, in the end, we're going to recommend that be raised as well, but and historical elements to be salvaged and reused in the next Glenside component. The libraries, Elkins Park, the librarians looking to expand the program in the libraries. Elkins Park is very limited in its size. It's got limited parking. It's fairly unsafe to cross Church Road to get to the facility. So with those kind of issues, with its limited access, and it's partially in a floodplain, we would consider to put this in with the Public Works and have that site maybe sold to a developer down the road, and ultimately remove Elkins Park and have that relocated to another area, maybe centralizing that idea. Glenside, again, it's very similar issues as Elkins Park. It's got a little creek right next to it. It's landlocked on some sides. It's got limited parking as well. There are some ADA issues getting from the upper level to the lower level, so that creates a little bit of a problem. We'd have to introduce an elevator in there. Here's another item where we were talking about relocating this library component to another area, but revitalizing that old library into a community asset for Glenside, and have a little satellite library to it, as well as maybe another little community room to it. Lamont and Roland are both part of already part of a community center, so we would be looking to keep an outpost of the library there, as well as some more community spaces there as well. And in the community arts center, well, I'm not sure how many people have been there, but the building, it's got great character. The program is excellent there, but the building is in rough shape. It's old. It'll be more cost for you to renovate that building, to bring it up to code, than it's probably worth. And ultimately, we're going to recommend that this building be raised, just because it'll cost you too much money to maintain it, let alone renovate it. Hopefully, we have some ideas where arts can go, and we'll catch that on later on in this presentation. So the arts will still stay strong in Cheltenham, just maybe not at this location. And the shovel shop. I'm not sure how many people have been in that, but there's just no way you're going to make that code compliant with ADA. I'm not even sure you can put any tenants in it, or lease it out to an accountant, lawyer, or anything like that for an office space, because of the issues there. So this is, again, it's a beautiful historic component of it, but we would recommend that the township divest and sell the property. And then we'll get to the pools. Both Glenside and Conklin have aged. They don't have an ADA necessarily compliant bathhouse. They have some issues with the coping around the pool, as well as the pool deck, and ultimately the infrastructure of the pool is in need of replacement. Here we're going to recommend that in Glenside that we remove the facility, maybe replace it with another type of splash community with a pavilion. Ultimately, maybe having a pool centralized somewhere else. And if we get into Cochran here, is very similar. This has more issues with its coping and its concrete pad around it. There's a lot of areas where kids can get cut up on that coping because it's just got some sharp corners. It's been bandaged, over its life, but it's going to continue to have issues. And this is going to be another one where we believe the cost to renovate it, it's cheaper to build one newer, larger one than it is to renovate two of them. Rick?
Okay, so getting into some proposed solutions, we mentioned earlier that the solutions here are in this this long spectrum of things here, and so we wanted to just unpack a couple of these. So the first group here we have is the first possible solution is mothball and maintain, and what that would be is essentially we're doing exactly what we're doing right now. Any facilities that we can't really use, we would pack them up and save them for future renovation, and we'll just maintain things as we go. This is our lowest first cost, our highest operating cost. This requires the least amount of investment right now, but it's going to continue to cost more money over time, and it's going to escalate in a non-linear curve as things get older and fall into more disrepair. This does not, when we think about all of the many things that we can do, it's not the best benefit across the board. And we also have declining asset value and resident satisfaction because of what we're doing. We have a possibility here to do adaptive reuse on all of the buildings here. This would be a very high first cost because of the surgical nature of adaptive reusing all of the buildings, and also that they're very small individual projects. It would take a very long time to work our way through all of the various buildings across the township. Our operating costs would be okay. Our benefits would probably be in the mid-range. We would still have operating challenges that the township currently struggles with as they run around trying to maintain all of these many facilities. We could rebuild in place of all of these buildings. This would be a very high first cost, and our operating costs might be better because we're building code compliant buildings, but we still have a long schedule and the operating challenges. So Rick, if you could click, this first pathway of just looking at everything we have exactly how it is not recommended within the broader context of programmatic needs and economics. So we're really looking at some hybrid options. And so the first one we're thinking about here is, can we do adaptive reuse on the libraries and community centers, and then do a unified campus for administration and operations, all of our municipal buildings? The second one we're looking at is doing an adaptive reuse on the community centers, but then doing a unified campus for the library, administration, and township operations. And then the third hybrid option would be to adaptively reuse these community center locations as satellites, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then the potential for unified campus, and it might be multiple campuses for the municipal functions. And so these are three pathways which are feasible when we start to think about what's going to be economically defensible for the township over a very long time, what's going to provide community services, what we can get done in a decent, in a good schedule. Another option is to centralize everything onto a campus. That is a possibility, and within the broad spectrum of things, it's a very economic solution, and it's going to operate in a low operating cost. It's also feasible, so it has to be on the table. And then at the polar end of the spectrum here is a single facility, which would be a very large building to hold all of this. It would be a low first cost, low operating cost, fast schedule, but it would be a terrible cultural fit for our township. I don't think any of us would be happy with that result, so that's not recommended. When we look at all of this, and we looked at all these different options, we're really looking in this hybrid scenario where we're going to look at our adaptive reuse of our community center locations currently, and then unified campuses for our other things. We're going to explain that a little bit now. So in this recommended hybrid approach, I think the first thing we wanted to talk about was new construction unification of our primary community and recreation services, which includes pools. So this is the fastest and most cost-effective way to get our community the high-quality services that are currently offline and or compromised. And it's going to keep our township competitive with other townships when we think about attraction and retention of residents. The second thing is unification of the primary library services. And this is something that the libraries have gone through a strategic plan, and this is a direction that they feel they need to move. Again, similar to the first point here, fastest and most cost-effective way to bring up the overall quality and modernization of the library services, which, as Eric mentioned, are really kind of constrained right now by the facilities that they're in. And again, this is also going to keep us competitive with our neighbors. The third point here, and we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper in a forthcoming slide, is really looking at community-based satellite services. And so this would be redevelopment of the 3 current community service locations at Lamont, Roland, and Glenside, to do some unique things there, which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. But the concept is to bring focused community and library services to these existing community locations. Then we'll look at new construction on a unified campus of the emergency and municipal services. Again, the fastest and most cost-effective way to get the township staff up and running so they can do their best jobs. And then also looking at new construction of a public works facility. As Eric mentioned, the current public works facility is it's aging and it's in a floodplain. We got some significant issues there to look at. And again, this, we look at new construction in another location. It allows us to keep the current facility online until we're ready to flip, because we can't have a gap in our services there. So when we think about this over the map of our township and look at our recommended approach, we'll look at a couple different things here. Rick, if you could click through, please. We have our 3 satellite locations that we're going to focus on. Then we're going to be looking at library and community recreation campuses. And we'll talk about some design solutions in a couple locations. What we're pointing at here is Wall Park and also the Temple Tyler location, where we've done some pretty deep dives in those areas. And then also within all this, we have the Briar Estate site, where we're going to be looking at administrative and emergency services. As Eric alluded to earlier, as we back out of the Public Works site and the Elkins Park Library, which we can't expand and is in the floodplain, that would be a piece of real estate for the township to consider divesting, given it's got a high commercial value within the township's central business corridor. And then the Community Arts Center and the Shovel Shop, 2 facilities which we're chasing from a maintenance perspective and are very hard, difficult to utilize and think about moving forward. We would likely want to think about the possibility of divestment for those as well.
Yeah, you're gonna move it over.
So going back to these community satellites, we've got some ideas about these, and while we're trying to unify our primary library and community services, we think that these 3 sites are really important, and they all hold a very special place within our township's identity. And so when we think about the things that we identify as a township, they all really kind of line up in a nice way with these 3 locations. And so if we think about Lamont, and as Eric mentioned earlier, the restoration of that building, we'd be looking to have a library satellite there. So this would be not our primary library, but a satellite location there that could provide library services, a community room for community events, a unique program offering there that's a center for township history that's really building off of that historic center and the location in the township. But this would be a really unique thing for us to bring people from all over the township together to celebrate our history there. We'd also be looking at some outdoor development there of a pavilion space and a splash pad. Rick's going to show us some graphics of this in a little bit. At Roland, we would be looking to do something similar, but at Roland, really trying to fold in the community arts program there and think about Roland as a center for arts and innovation within the township. And so we can put our arts programs there. Maybe we have a maker space that's accessible to residents. And then over in Glenside, and we're talking in Glenside about the Glenside Library building, because Memorial Hall, unfortunately, is in pretty tough shape to be thinking about adaptive reuse for. But the library is in a good position to do this, to think about, again, a satellite library location, a community room, and being on the creek there, we have an opportunity to do some environmental education, because this is something that's very important to our township, with everything that we do through all of our waterways and the many different sustainability initiatives that we take on. So when we looked at all of the many possible places that we could in the township for possible redevelopment, we cast a really wide net, from large campus locations where we have big chunks of land to more individual, smaller properties. And, you know, from this long list, we kind of soft tested these things and then drilled in more deeply in a couple of specific locations. And so we put some study effort into Briar and Wall Park, the Briar Estate, where the current Township Administration Building and Police is, Wall Park, which is somewhat contiguous with that. And also looked at the Temple Tyler campus. And, you know, it has some proximity to John Russell Park, which is a large outdoor open space. So again, we're trying to focus on what could we possibly utilize. And then obviously, as we mentioned, we're also going to look at the 3 community satellite locations. Rick, if you could click through, and we're going to show you a little bit on them as well. So I think, Rick, I think the next slide is for you, and you're going to walk through some of the design studies we went through. Again, as we talked about at the very beginning here, these are all extremely conceptual. There's so much design to come that we're gonna have to work through. This is just kind of to see what could be.
Yeah, so like Drew just said, these are really just feasibility studies, looking at zoning, building type, occupancy, parking requirements, seeing what can fit on a site, will it fit on a site, how will things relate to each other and fit together. So the first one we're going to show you is the Tyler and Russell Park site, highlighted in yellow there for general orientation. Now I gotta get my mouse. All right. So to reorient you here now, we rotated 90 degrees. Cheltenham Avenue is on your left side and Penrose Avenue runs right up through the middle. And we kind of group these, the old Tyler site. Let's see if I can get my mouse up here. This here, which we grouped as the community functions. And then the Russell Park area and site here would be the kind of operational end of the township. So the site organization here, we set up some major axes and some minor axes, and they serve as kind of the center points for the community center. So that would be taking the where the Tyler dormitories are now, making that a large open green space for the community, being a center of activity, and then using the buildings to form a community plaza. And then at the services end of things, we have a township plaza off of which you can enter all the different services for the township. In this location, there's also an opportunity to use the new Public Works building as an opportunity for some unique signage that kind of define a gateway for the township. And then the services would all be in a secure area, just due to the nature of all the services there. And we'd have 2 ways in and out of that secure zone. The wonderful thing about the Tyler site, if you've been out there, is there's just some really nice views and landscape and estates out there. So we want to take advantage of those views in this design. So the buildings are set up to take advantage of those views from the buildings, and then also from the outdoor spaces as well, to take advantage of those beautiful views. And then we want to create some sort of visual connection between these 2 pieces that are kind of catty-corner from each other. And then you'd have visual cues along the main axes to kind of clue us in that something's going on. And if you look closely, it may be hard to see, but the idea would be to have street lights with either the flags or the banners to kind of really celebrate that axis and the things that occur on this street. So this is a closer look at the Tyler site and the community functions. So we have a community center, the library, and a new arts building. We have off-street parking, which occurs behind that nice old stone wall. So it's kind of hidden from sight from the street. And then we have staff parking off the end. And we have on that main axis, we have a dual entry. One would be for pedestrians from the Lamont side of the community for pedestrian traffic. And then the other side would be for the vehicular visitors that come to visit the site. And then off of the arts building, we'd have an outdoor terrace and a sculpture garden. Again, these are all just concepts and ideas. There's room for some recreational courts, and then also a fenced-in pool area to relate to the community center. And we want to install some sort of crossmark demarcations that are special and out of the ordinary, just to, again, kind of slow people down, but also to define this area as something special. And I could really see in this area here that you could actually close that off, have a block party, and not disturb traffic on Penrose. So there's some wonderful opportunities there. And then creating, some special spaces, just defining those axes and reinforcing the importance of this kind of center open space. So now we're looking at the John Russell Park is basically in this location here, and then there's an existing strip mall with a big field of asphalt behind it that's really not being used for anything. So if you're familiar with the site at all, there's kind of a ridge up here, and then it slopes down to John Russell Park. And so the idea for this township complex would be you could enter on the upper level of the ridge or down below at the lower level as well. Again, this whole area, most of the police stations we do are secured, again, because of the nature of the vehicles and things that they have, as well as public works. They have a lot of equipment and supplies that want to be secured. So the whole complex would be fenced in and gated. And those would be the entry points and exit points for that secure zone. And then the public works entry off of Cheltenham Avenue there. As part of the scheme, we would need to control traffic out on the Cheltenham Avenue because it's not always the easiest place to get out on. And the other exit, you have multiple directions where they could go. When we did meet with the staff and reviewed this concept, they did have concerns about working with Philadelphia to control this light. And then also they spoke about traffic often getting backed up on Penrose, so that it might not be great for emergency responses, being able to get to places in a hurry. Then we have our staff parking within the secure zone, and then public parking on the outside. And then again, all the public entries into those service facilities off of that one parking lot. So this would be the emergency services building. We'd have the fire engine bay here and the ambulance bay here. This was set up so that they can have a drive-through bay and can exit either direction as needed very easily. And then the emergency services or the ambulance as well can easily go out either exit. And then there would be a place for the public to drop off large bulk items at Public Works. So now we're going to look at the Briar Estate site and how that could potentially get worked out. The red lines are the property lines of the township owned property. And so we're working within those constraints. In this scenario, we have the existing Briar Township building and proposed new police building. And then this would be kind of a common space shared between the two, but it would also act as kind of the vertical connector for the township building in terms of getting to the levels efficiently with an elevator that wouldn't necessarily interrupt the existing structure of that township building. Let's see. So there are some challenges with the site, and that is steep slopes. And in these designs, we would actually need some retaining walls, but we would use that to our advantage and incorporate it in the design in terms of the public entry for the police would be up on this higher level. And then as we go down the slope, the services part of the police building would be on that lower level, and they can have quick access to their vehicles and egress out. Similar, if we were to build a new ambulance building here, that would be set up the same kind of way, where the bay below is down below and exits out onto Spur Road, and kind of the other activity areas would be on the upper level. The yellow area would be the public parking. And again, in this scenario, we are realigning the entry drive with Beth Shalom across the street. And so that reconfigures things a little bit on the site, making it a bit more efficient. And then we would have staff parking areas. And the police, or actually the public entries here off of that public parking lot. And then the police, again, having two means of egress from the site, which is important. And then also to consider is, what does this facility look like from the different perspectives as you're coming down Old York Road and as you enter the site. Now, in this scenario, we can adaptively reuse the township building, or we could raise it and build a new building in its place. All right, now we're going to look at Wall Park. Again, both of these sites are fairly centrally located in the overall geometry of the township. which is a positive. And so Wall Park, you're familiar with it. Church Road runs through. And if you're familiar with Church Road, from what I understand, it often gets backed up, that you don't want to be going through there in rush hour. So doing this project would be an opportunity to actually improve those conditions along Church Road. General setup here is that we have the community center component in the center. We have the library nestled along the creek in the trees. And then we have our more activity oriented items on the farther end. Again, if you're familiar with the site, there's a nice size soccer field in the middle here, just to give you some orientation. But so,
Rick, you might want to address the realignment of Spur Road, the intersection, and
Yep.
Meeting House.
yeah, that's coming up. So we want to widen the road so we can get left turn lanes in there, which we really feel would alleviate much of the traffic issues that exist along Church Road there. And we propose to do a major pedestrian crossing with a traffic light and some other minor modifications. And like Eric just mentioned, some realignment of Spur Road as we get down to the bottom here, just to make things as safe as possible for pedestrians mostly. And then there would be a major pedestrian connection with then the Briar State above. The entries into the site to get to the parking lots are aligned with Spur Road and Meeting House Road, keeping things clean and neat. And the Wall House, the design really is kind of focused around that, and it acts as the organizing theme. And just really the way we have this presented, it celebrates that Wall House property and the history here at Cheltenham. And then the public access locations off of the parking lot. And again, important to think of what this all looks like from the road, and then also the experience as you come into the site, how things look and work. And in this scenario, we were able to put the parking behind the building. So from Church Road, you don't see just a vast sea of parking, but you see all the various activities that are going on. And there's a system of trails and pathways that kind of tie the whole site together that can also ultimately get tied into the master trail system in terms of getting around the township by foot or bike. All right, now we're going to look at the satellite campuses, and Roland is the first up here. So as Eric mentioned, briefly, that the old 4-square building would be here. We propose to remove that as it's just in really poor condition. And in its place, put an outdoor public terrace and additional parking. The terrace can be used in conjunction with the functions of the building. And so then we would renovate the remainder of the 1-story school building and basically break it up into 3 components: a satellite library, a community room, and then the relocation of the art center. And so, there's lots of opportunity there for the arts in terms of a fit, having multiple classroom type areas, and then also a gym and a stage type area that can be used in multiple ways. And then down at the lower end of the site, providing a splash pad. Looking at Lamont. Yeah, we mentioned this before, renovate the main level of the building. And also here, break it up into three components: the community room, the historic center, and the satellite library. And then out on the site, providing a pavilion and a splash pad. And now looking at the Glenside site. So we have, to orient yourselves, Glenside Hall would be here, and then the pool off to the side. Again, we would recommend removing Memorial Hall and the swimming pool. And in its place, place pavilion with restrooms and catering kitchen and a stage at one end. And then in place of the pool, providing a splash pad and a playground. And then kind of tying all these elements together with a nicely landscaped picnic grove. And then heading on to the other side, back to the Glenside Library and repurposing that to renovate that into three components again: the satellite library, a community room, and then the environmental kind of education center. And that's it for the designs to date.
Thanks, Rick. I just want to reinforce to everyone that these aren't final designs. There's just concepts. And there's whether it's Temple and John Russell, if any of those components are used, or Wall Park or Briar Site, or any of those are used, we haven't, this hasn't been fully vetted out. There's other options, and there could be hybrid options here. So I saw some posts in there, some of those concerns, and that I just want to make sure we're very clear that this is just a fit and where things could fit. This isn't final by any stretch. And there could be a hybrid between this, whether it's tile or briar, tile or wall, whatever. There's a lot of potential options here. Now, we do not have a lot of empty areas in our township, so we have to take advantage of the ones we have. And the one real big difference that you're going to see on those evaluations of the sites is it, do we own the site and do we have to purchase a site, or is it our own land? And then ultimately, is there taxable adjustments for the township on any of those schemes? Meaning, can some of that real estate be more taxable for the community or not? And then these are all part of things that would have to be reviewed as a part of the process. So again, this test was a fit to see how things could work on there, and that's hopefully what we were able to achieve. All right, so going to the evaluation, all these ideas that Rick just presented have a cost, and it's the bad news time, but we have to kind of review what that's going to look like. So Rick, you need to move the slide. So in the municipal complex, where we were looking at the township building, police, and EMS, with getting replaced, assuming that they're on the same site, wherever that site might be, we're looking at somewhere in the range of, on the low end at 23,500,000 to a high end at 33 million. And that's, you can see how each building's kind of broken down there between the township, police, and EMS site work. And the soft costs are, we're building contingencies in there for cost escalations. We understand that this isn't something that's going to happen right away. So we're trying to anticipate having several years of contingencies in here and cost factors to go in that. And it also encompasses some demolition and other costs like your permitting fees and or other explorations that you might have, like geothermal, what have you. There's costs that come with that. So this kind of looks at what the entire facility would cost from day one until the end when it's all furnished. And it's a ballpark price, but that's what we wanted to make sure we understood what their potential value is for that effort. On the community aspect with the library, the community, this would be a central township community, not necessarily a neighborhood community center. This is a central township one. Possibly has an athletic gymnasium to it, maybe not. Could be, it's a debatable concept, and whether it has an indoor pool or not. But if it did have all those pieces, we believe that cost could be as high as 48.3 or at the highest end at 65 million 500,000. And again, these have very similar things, like they all on the same site. This is assuming that there's these components would be on some site, whether it's Tyler, Ballpark, or wherever it might go. And again, you can see what those potential soft costs are. And the community centers, these are the outpost or more neighborhood central community centers. And that you can see what each individual one, where we're renovating a portion of the existing facility. There's some demolition, there's some landscape, and then there's a splash pad and a type of a pavilion. So you can see how Glenside, Lamont, and Roland, there's similar investment required on each one of them. And in public works, I know this is probably a little further removed. The existing public works does work, but if there is an opportunity to seek it at another location, we believe that replacement cost is around 15 million on the low end and 22 million on the high end. You can see your property acquisition is asterisk because at this point we don't know that the township has a piece of property that we can use. So ultimately that price could be adjusted depending on what that property acquisition would take. And then on the municipal, or I'm sorry, on the municipal or the overall summary of the cost here, when you look at the municipal campus, the community, the satellite communities, as well as the public works, it's a big dollar value, but we're estimating between 105 million and 142 million on the high end. And it really depends on the timeline of all this. I think we projected something over 10 years, but again, it's just projections. It's just we have to start somewhere, and then as these projects evolve, we'll adjust these numbers to reflect more of a reality type situation out here. I believe, Allison, is this your slide?
I believe it is. Yeah, so we've given you a lot of different things to consider. And what we've shown you so far is really a fraction of a lot of the work that's been done. There's so many more things we can delve into. So we just want to talk a little bit about next steps. So we're opening a public comment period now through August 31st. I believe there was an email address earlier, and we'll put it back up on the screen later at the end of this slide or the presentation. Facilities@cheltenhampa.gov is where you can send us your comments, and we'll have this presentation up on our webpage as well, so that you can review it, take your time, digest it, think about things, and send us your comments as well. So one of the other things we will need to do is really start looking at our financing options. I know these are really large price tags. And I think no matter what option we look at, whether it's some of the things that we've talked about today and some of the things that weren't included in this presentation, just so that we don't take all night with you, whether it's renovating all these facilities individually, our costs are still going to be very significant, if not more, if we choose those options. So we are looking at how we can finance this. We will be meeting with our financial advisors to look at bonds and other financing mechanisms. We'll be appraising properties to evaluate the cost of acquisition and divesting certain properties, and looking at grant opportunities and timing. Timing is pretty key in some of these grants as well. Not only facilities are difficult to fund, but there are certain aspects of facilities that we can apply for grants, and also being able to make sure that we have a really competitive application so we can maximize the dollars available to us. And then finally, and I think fairly importantly, is the impact of these plans on property taxes and fees. So our goal is to try to minimize the effect of all this work on you, the taxpayer, at the end of the day, whether it's, creating wonderful new facilities or renovating what we have. Whatever the decision is, we want to make sure that we are fiscally responsible with the money that we have available to us. So we will, Eric, Drew, and Rick will be preparing a facilities report, which will have all this information and more detail available for the community and board to review. So you'll be able to see, all the work that went into evaluating our existing facilities and determining like program size and things like that for these buildings that were proposed. So it's kind of a lot of the work behind what you saw today. And then the board will be having public conversations regarding what we've talked about. They will be taking into consideration the comments that they've received over the past, over the next month or so. And the work we do to evaluate potential funding streams so that they can work toward a decision on concepts, and then how do we phase them. And then once a decision is made on how to move forward, we will be working with the architects to design these buildings and how do we program them. And that's going to be really important for you all as community members to participate in those conversations so that we ensure that what goes into these buildings is something that will be used by you all. So that's where we stand at this point. And I believe there's a graphic that'll show a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so so Allison, this slide's really kind of talking about how we're completing the study. We're trying to put a package for the board to take a look on the process and what their steps might be, and then we're looking at how to get that project funded, or maybe some parts like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But we'll be looking at a budget master plan with the commissioners to see how to move forward. And ultimately, we believe that the first phase was going to be probably something with the community, the library, and whatever this recreation component might be. We might be the first phase, and then you follow up with emergency services, township facilities. Then you move to public works, and then the neighborhood satellite communities. Is what we were thinking might be more easily done. So, but again, it's just our review, and we're welcome your comments and ideas.
Okay. Let me bring up. All right. If you have questions or comments you'd like to make, please raise your hand and we'll take them one by one. I will say we'll do our best to answer questions that probably are more logistical in nature as far as decision making and things like that. We probably won't be able to answer them, but we will do our best to help you understand or answer questions that you might have on this presentation. Okay, Dan George.
Well, I'm going to limit myself on this because there's just so much ground to cover. And I appreciate the fact that the township is taking this initiative. It's obvious to a lot of people that it needs to be done. One question that came up that I hadn't heard referred to in any of the concepts was the role of either non-governmental nonprofits that have a township either responsibility or contribution to make that impacts facility revisiting. And also, along with that, the same question about, is there any synergy with any other municipal authorities, the big one being the school department, where some of the land use might actually have synergistic application for some of the things that you've been looking at improving or replacing or relocating?
I will say that we have been talking with the school district and we've looked at a number of options. I would say we're at a point where I don't know that we can make any representations in any one way, but we're always open to looking at ideas on how to be creative moving forward. So if there's an opportunity that presents itself, we will absolutely look into it. Okay, thanks, Dan. Jerry.
You're muted, Jerry.
I'm sorry, could everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. And good evening to my Lamont Citizens United people that are on. We're really fighting to keep our center open. It's worth the historic that it is. And we have our mission statement that I would really like to read before I ask my question. And it goes, Lamont Citizens United is dedicated to exploring and supporting all positive avenues for full restoration and function of the Lamont Community Center and the Free Library. It is imperative that we develop and implement programs that promote the sustainability of these structures. We plan to create a safe haven for youth and elders and a gathering place for all of our Lamont citizens, while permanently maintaining the historic significance of these landmarks in the village of Lamont. We believe that preserving the past secures the future for our community and our children. And I'm sure everybody agrees on that. And my question is, where will the funding come from? And what is the order of the replacement of the proposed ones?
We are looking at a wide variety of funding that whatever becomes available, like I said, it's going to be a mix probably of financing, grants, and divesting of properties. As far as phasing is concerned, we're looking at working toward some of our community and recreation facilities first, as they are probably some of the facilities that are in the most dire need and they serve our community. With respect to what we're calling our satellite facilities, which would be Roland, Glenside, and Lamont, they're kind of as we get funding available. So Jerry, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we've applied for several funding streams for Lamont Community Center because they came available.
Yes, and I wanted to thank you for that as well. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. So if we're successful, that would probably move the timeline for Lamont ahead of a number of other things. Same as if funding became available for one of the other community centers, that might move that project up ahead of something else. So they're kind of a as funding becomes available type thing. If not, they would stay kind of as in that order at this point.
Okay, and I wanted to ask because nothing was, what about the heating system in Lamont?
That'll be part of, if we're successful for grant funding, that'll be part of the renovation.
Okay, and the last thing, what would do you have an actual timeline and resources gap between shutting down the existing facilities, because we know nothing is going to happen now as far as the heater is concerned, because when the winter time comes, it's going to be shut down again. So I guess until they get together, we won't know anything until then, or what?
Yeah, our goal will be to do our best to continue operating as we have been until a plan is determined and a path forward, and we go through all the steps to get to each of the facilities.
Okay, because I was just concerned of what the order of the replacements of the proposed facilities were going to be, but I guess once they get together again, I'll have the answers to that.
Yes, this will be, as far as providing answers, what I say tonight may change completely once everyone's had an opportunity to digest and provide responses, and the board has had an opportunity to discuss in the public forum and deliberate and make a decision.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that M. Oswald?
Hi, I'm sorry. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
I apologize if this was already covered. I did arrive a little bit late at the meeting. I'm just curious in terms of this, as a proposal, understanding right now we're going from 2 pools. If we're proposing closing 2 pools, how many pools are we, proposing to open up? If we're going from 3 current libraries, what's the proposal in terms of how many libraries? If I missed that, I do apologize. I just wanted to know like what changes we're looking at in those regards.
Sure. So the concept proposed is centralizing both the library and the pools for the main facility. The pools would be 2 pools, an indoor and an outdoor pool, with the goal that we will be able to provide more swimming opportunities for our community year round. This will help us be more efficient in operating the pools, but also as well as in terms of cost and opening and length of service. And hopefully we can avoid some of the situations we found ourselves in this year with respect to our pools. And I think by being open year round, we can expand programs to a wider variety of audience and citizens by doing that. With respect to the library, the proposal that we're following is what the library board has presented to us, which is a centralized library, larger than one of the ones that we have here, where most of the services would operate out of, and then the 3 branches would be smaller areas for pickup and reading rooms and computer services. So it would not be as large as, say, what is in the Roland Community Center.
Okay, so just to clarify, we're going to go from 3 libraries to 4.
Yes, but smaller libraries.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm. Kind of like outposts for the library. Okay, thank you. Kathy Bowers.
Hi there. I just one thing that wasn't addressed and always has been a concern of mine is that we're looking. So one proposal was at Wall Park. You have the pools there and all this great stuff, but we have no walkable, bikeable access ways to get from one side of Glenside over by in Glenside, Keswick area and Lavrock, all that, but down to this area. We'll have Cheltenham Hills Drive. Right there is a nightmare in itself when people go to bike and walk on it. Was this addressed or thought about? Everything seems to be located on the one side of Church Road. Anything that would be, so do we propose that we're redoing Cheltenham Hills Drive, or how do we, I mean, I've been here 54 years of my life, and most of it because I did not go on the other side of the township. I never went to the community centers. There was no real way to ever get there. Have we addressed that issue for those who don't drive?
One of the reasons why one of the options was for the Elkins Park option was the ability to have proximity to public transportation. And there is, the township has a trail plan, not that it is available today, but to construct a trail that would go along the spine of the township. So that is a future consideration that there.
But when you say the spine of the township, what's the spine?
I don't have it in front of me, but it does involve a trail that would kind of go along, I think it's Cheltenham Hills Drive, and then go near Wall Park, cross over Old York Road, and then connect to High School Park into the existing Tookenny Creek Trail.
Right, and would that be something that would be done in conjunction with the, or is this something that, oh, we're gonna have this facility and then we're gonna think about how everybody gets there, 20 years later? Because it's gonna be a hazard. That's what's gonna end up. That's my concern.
It'll all be subject to funding, unfortunately.
All right, well, just something to really think about, because it definitely is an impact. If you don't drive, you're not getting to the other side of the township. So thank you. That's all,
Thank
a lot
you.
of other questions, but we'll leave it at that.
Sure,
Thank
thank you. Yvonne Strickland.
So,
You're muted.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering what the charges get around renovation with companies. Funded renovate first or what's the
I'm sorry, your audio is garbled. Is there a way to maybe get closer to the mic so we can hear you better?
Can you hear me?
Try it again.
No?
I can hear you. Let's see what happens when you talk a little bit more.
I'll go slower. What the charges they order, renovations with the community centers?
Could anyone hear what she said?
I can't, Allison.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Strickland, maybe you could put it in the chat.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Give her an opportunity to throw it in the chat, and we'll move on to Darlene.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Because
Yes.
okay. At first, I apologize for being late. I had a little family thing I needed to address. I came in when it was showing the presentation regarding money and funding and cost. So I think my brain is focused on that. So my question is the funding and all the costs and the request for the grants going to be lumped in one big pot? Or if you get grant money for one specific thing, will that money be allotted for that particular facility or that particular issue? So I guess my question is funding and allotments and keeping the funding where it should go. Maybe that's my question.
Sure. So when we apply for grants, we have to have projects that meet the criteria of the funder. So for example, if we apply for a pool, or somebody has a grant for a pool, we would need to be able to prove, provide a project with a pool and fund it. We can't say we'll put it toward a gym or something else like that. So we go after funding streams that are available when they're available for the types of projects that we're looking at. And it's a kind of a tricky puzzle trying to fit the pieces together to make sure that we have something that meets the funder scopes and is in a dollar value that makes sense to go after that. Unfortunately, funding for facilities isn't always readily available. So the cobbling money together from various sources to see how we can reduce the cost of this. There are some pretty interesting funding streams that are available to us that haven't been available in the past. So I feel like timing for a project like this is probably better than it's ever been if we're looking for alternative sources of funding. So we will do our best to seek them out and apply for them so that we can reduce the cost to taxpayers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. For the properties that would be divested, i.e. sold, is there a projected revenue from those? And I guess if so, or maybe if not, is that the significant offset for the cost of these other projects?
We will be going doing appraisals on each of these properties to determine a price. We don't have a number for them at this point, but we feel like every little bit counts toward reducing that cost. And just remember, each of these properties, even if we don't divest them, there's the cost to maintain them and keep them. So even that should be helpful for us in our facilities plan. So we hope to have that information in the next few months to be able to help make better decisions. Abigail.
Hi, thanks. Appreciate the presentation. It's very interesting, but it does seem like there's a lot of missing information or a gap in information about the financial aspects of the project. And I know there's been some questions already, but earlier in the presentation, the presenters talked about the fact that certain options have higher, sort of current costs and operating costs than the potential other alternatives, but we're not getting any kind of cost benefit analysis. We don't know how much the properties might sell for that we could divest from. You mentioned that some of those properties are in a floodplain, so it seems like divesting from them may be actually kind of difficult in the current environment. Some of the proposals around the pools currently are costs for membership for the pools. It's a 2-month relatively affordable activity. Will those have to go up if this, there's just not a lot of information about what we are currently paying as township and in terms of our taxes towards these activities, what we would have to pay to simply sort of renovate what we have right now and make it usable, and then what these alternatives will cost comparatively. And it's difficult for us to understand the impacts on ourselves, our families, and the township if we don't have that information.
Sure. There was an analysis done on the cost to renovate the facilities. We can provide that information. Like I said, just to keep this meeting from going for hours and hours, we have plenty of information to share with you. It did get cut out, but we will provide that to you. I don't know if Drew, Eric, or Rick want to comment, but I would say that the numbers are fairly close for renovation versus the concepts that were presented.
Is the information available on the township website? Because I was trying to look through some of the past facilities meetings and I couldn't find much.
Not at this time. What's on our website right now is just kind of conditions reports, but the final report will have this information in it.
And will that final report be available before the public comment period closes?
I don't know, Drew, Eric, Rick, whether we can provide just that information out ahead of time and put it on our website.
Yeah, Allison, I believe it's our goal to get that to you. I forget when are you closing the window on that?
August 31st.
Yeah, we will have our a full assessment in your hands prior to that. We did review the facilities, and a lot of times, like renovating 3.5 libraries was cheaper to build one larger one with more programs in it. Building one pool with more facilities, a larger pool, is cheaper than renovating the two with those enclosures. So we'll get you that. We'll have that to Allison, and it's part of our study. But we did vet through some of this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have pursued what we did.
All right. I just wanted to read Ms. Strickland's comment. It was, what and who determines the order of renovation with the community centers? It would be determined based on available dollars and programming. Like I said, we had grant funding sources available that met the criteria for Lamont, so that we've applied for those grants, and if we're successful, we'll be able to move forward with some of the projects at the Lamont Community Center, and then we'll keep an eye out on other funding sources. But our goal would really be to focus on kind of the holistic approach. What is going to affect the most members of the community by looking at kind of the centralized location at Wall Park, or whether it's Tyler, whatever the case may be, so that we can take the pressure off the resources that we have that really aren't functioning fully. And that'll enable us to still continue providing the services while renovating the other three resources as well. Okay, I see Dave and Carol. Sorry.
One of the reasons that we are in this situation is that over the past, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years, the township has not been spending the money it needs to be spending on maintenance for all the buildings. What provision is going to be made so that that needed maintenance will be done on whatever new buildings we build, so that this doesn't run into, so this doesn't happen, another 10 or 15 years down the road. For example, also, like, what are we doing in terms of the continuing maintenance on all of the new schools that we have built in the last 10 or 12 years?
I can't answer the question with respect to the schools, but one of the nice things about this project is by having all new facilities is you'll have some time to take a breather. But also coming out of this, we would have like a maintenance program developed for each of these facilities, so that moving forward, whatever the recommended maintenance is on these facilities, the goal would be to keep up with them so that this doesn't happen going forward. So that we're treating our brand new facilities right from the get-go. A number of the facilities that we have are all facilities that we just kind of moved into, like say, Lamont, the community centers, Lamont and Roland, they're repurposed school buildings. So we're looking at boilers that have been in there from the beginning, or have been there for a while. So, and then these buildings are older and have problems that, due to other resources that the township has had to fund and work through, it's had to make tough decisions on where does it put its money. So the goal would be to try to help reduce those challenges going forward. Okay, Howard, Scott. Thank you.
My question has to do with, within the last few months, one of the things that I believe that was requested and perhaps approved was at the Public Works facility to expand the size of the structure that will store salt from 300 to 400 tons to maybe up to 800 to 900 tons. I think $1.3 million project. And we know that that's in a floodplain apparently. And part of this plan recognizes maybe that isn't the place that Public Works should be. And I'm just wondering how far sighted, because the buzzwords of sustainability and resilience, and Lord knows, and Mother Nature has let us know that things are changing and changing rapidly. So I'm wondering, is part of the cost that you're thinking about, are these going to be concrete rebar reinforced that are going to be able to sustain, 135-mile-an-hour winds, which is likely to happen in the next 100 years? So I'm trying to understand really how far-sighted, if we're going to endeavor to do this and make it sustainable, resilient. I also think that having, as far as there's some possible savings to have things centralized, and both in computers and in facilities, there are advantages to having distributed redundancy, like multiple libraries, or maybe multiple pump stations that when, not if, but when something fails, there's backup, there's fail-safe. Similarly, we need those facilities for communities to thrive, because they're going to go down even with new facilities. So that I'm trying to understand, how far-sighted do we have people on the team that are city planners, plus have the knowledge of, yes, form follows function is an expression of it. Do we really know the program that's going to go in each one of those? Because you can't design unless you know what the program's going to be very, very specifically. So I just am wondering who else is being brought on board. It's a great presentation. What other credentialed people do we need on board aside from financial advisors and very talented architects? Who are the people that we've already engaged or at least have as advisors for really city planning in a very different world? So I'm just asking, how far and deep have we looked?
So right now, this is fairly surface. We're looking at concepts and ideas on how we can lay things out. We have an understanding of the types of programs that we're looking at and the size of the spaces. With respect to further design, we will be bringing in appropriate experts going forward as appropriate. We've already been talking with our traffic engineer and our civil engineer on some issues as well, just to kind of help work through some of the concerns. Like you mentioned, yeah, floodplain is definitely a concern. We want to make sure that we're in a good space with our new buildings and things like that. With respect to the salt shed, that is a fairly temporary structure, so it can move to whatever facility wherever that public works facility goes. So there's definitely a lot of things that we know we haven't thought through everything, and there are a lot of things that we still would need to work through in order to finalize designs and actually put shovels in the ground. We recognize there is definitely a lot of work to do. Okay, any other questions? Okay, looks like Dan George again.
So one other question I just posted, but I would like to kind of hear if there's actually an answer to it, is the extent to which folks that are currently line workers working on behalf of us who are employed by the township have had in input to concerns they have about operating and meeting the needs of their own departments and meeting the expectations that the community has had for them while they've been trying to work in less than optimal circumstances. That was one half. And then the other half being, while a number of the concepts seemed interesting from an architectural and let's say consolidation point of view, I'm really concerned about how certain functions are located geographically so that they can make optimal use of whatever it is they end up having to use. Obvious point, like the police, EMS being able to go out at least somewhat equally to all of the areas where the highest incidents of response are required and things of that nature. So I'm concerned that while some concepts may be attractive from a consolidation point of view, some of them may be short shrifting things that need to have a geographic component as a primary element of their location and functional operation. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, township staff has definitely been part of the conversation going forward. We've talked with them about space needs, about location needs. They've looked at each of the concepts that were presented to you this evening, provided their thoughts and input and recommendations on concepts that they support more or less than others, and how to make some of them stronger, and kind of overlook some of the weaknesses they saw in the design. So yes, that has definitely been part of the conversation. And as we go forward, their thoughts and input will continue to be part of the evaluation of them. Hey, Juliana.
Hi. I was just wondering what happened to the facilities committee that was made up of citizens, and I believe some of the commissioners and township staff. I haven't heard anything about it. I was wondering if that's just dissolved at this point. I think even though there are already some ideas on the table, it may be a good idea to still have that committee so that when something does get solidified, we can reach out into each ward better, to find out what residents want, whether it's a revamped facility or a new facility. And just talking to some of my neighbors recently from my block, they weren't even aware of many of the facilities that they have to use. So, you know, it is important for us to talk to each other, and I think that committee was a way to get each ward a little more involved.
Yeah, we'll talk at the board level and try to come up with a plan. Unfortunately, like I said, we've had a lot of change over the last 6 to 9 months. So in order to keep the project rolling forward and looking at concepts, we didn't have the opportunity to really engage. But I think as we look at, like you said, programming and design and other more details, I think we can work with you guys to you know, get your input and help on that. Appreciate it. All right. Anybody else for comments? Okay, Ted. Ted, I think I hear you, but not quite. Now I hear you. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Realizing that this is conceptual right now, what's the time horizon if we put this in, if we going forward in this? We have to obtain properties, we have to destroy, knock down facilities, put up new facilities. There's a time period when you'll be tearing down facilities and still having to utilize other things like the police and such, the libraries, whatever. So what is the overall time horizon for this conceptually? I understand there's a lot going on here. We don't have all the dates, but again, you know, and we're going to have to figure out bonding and going out for grants and such. So has anybody thought of the concept of that? Where are we going with this? How long is it going to take? And I understand there was a dollar amount put on conceptually, but as we move forward, everyone knows that costs go up. Has anybody attacked that and figured out, well, if it takes 10 years to do this, it's actually not going to cost 1.3 million. It might cost 4 million. Thank you.
Yes, the long-term cost escalation is definitely something to consider and be concerned about. Plus the potential funding opportunities potentially would dry up. I like, if I had my crystal ball, I would say that anything that's available, you know, this year, next year, maybe in the next 5 years won't be available after that. Hold on one second.
She's dodging.
Sorry, who's muting? I need to mute somebody. Sorry. As far as time horizon, we all know that these types of projects do take a lot of time. So if the board made a decision tomorrow on a concept, it would likely take months and months of design evaluation with, site planning with the engineers, and our architects doing their design and meeting with the community. So I would imagine probably 6 months to a year for kind of coming up with what that building or site looks like, and then probably another year to 2 years for construction to get to that. So I would say the earliest is about 2 to 3 years for the first building to be occupied, depending on when a decision is made. It may go faster, but I don't have a crystal ball, and that will all be part of the conversation for the board to have once we have more your comments and more information on ability to finance this project. Okay, Teresa.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Allison, for facilitating so nicely and including everyone. And also thank you to the architects for such a comprehensive startup here. I guess I would just like to jump in behind the concern about the funding. We all know we pay a lot of pretty high taxes here. And I think that, going forward, Juliana's suggestion and reminder that within the community, there's a lot of resources just for ideas, and perhaps we could have that committee reactivated and begin to search around as, shareholders and citizens of the township for grant money, and not leave it all on township staff's shoulders, if that's a possibility. My question initially was came behind Howard's comment and concern about, we're approaching a different world now, and we suddenly have to pay attention in different ways for the sustainability. Had this question that came up, the idea of solar fields, and I know that means that we need land to put it on, but I wanted to ask Eric what alternative energy sources are being considered for these facilities. Have you looked at the possibility? I know you mentioned geothermal, but have you been looking at solar elements?
We haven't, thanks. That's a good question, Teresa, but we have not dove into these projects that deep. As the projects become realized, we will look at other opportunities, whether it's photovoltaics. I don't think wind farms are going to be much good here, but geothermal is definitely going to be an option. Geothermal likes rock. Cheltenham has plenty of it. So it would definitely be something to consider here on some of the facilities. But we haven't divested into the particular project. This is really just we're a mile high up looking down at fit and how it can help the township.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick on this one. As we're, my company, our practice, we focus on sustainable design and construction at all different levels. And, thinking about our township and what we want to be looking at, we've got issues of electrification that's coming, down the pike, in communities all over the country. So we'll want to be thinking about resilience within that framework. Solar is definitely something that's factoring into things, and whether or not it's put on day one, we're going to plan for it. And there's ways to be designing and constructing the buildings to facilitate easy solar installations in the future. Someone posted a comment in the chat about the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a good question, and geothermal is something that is taken into account in the IRAs, which is making it more cost feasible than it has been in about 10 years. It's putting some market incentives back there to look at that. I think we'll also want to think about, from a resilience standpoint, how can these facilities operate through inclement conditions? What needs to be maintained, and how can they also serve the community at that time? That's a huge potential. And as we look out at the the funding landscape over the next 5 or 10 years, resilience in our built environment is becoming more and more of an attractive thing when it comes to financing and grants. So it's something that we'll definitely want to keep an eye on here, just for the benefit of our community and also on the economic side of these buildings.
Thank you, Drew. Sydney.
Thank you. Apropos the last discussion, as the owner of one of the very few LEED Platinum certified structures in the township, you'll see the slide behind me, in the time since I installed my solar panels, geothermal heating and cooling, subsequently accompanied by battery storage, I think I've recouped my upfront cost at least once over by now 10 years ago. And I would recommend and even insist that any buildings constructed by the township in the future conform to the best standards of the US Green Building Council for sustainability and if energy efficiency, environmental consistency, water runoffs, proper landscaping that does not involve using fossil fuels to cut grass, etc. So there are many principles that I think the township can and should adhere to, not only because they cost money, but also because they create an example for the other members of the community to follow.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? Howard.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Mr. Khan had said, part of what is a interest of mine is that to see that gray water is something that any new buildings would consider, because the scarcity of potable drinking water is only going to increase. Capture of rainwater to maybe irrigate landscapes, not have lawns, but edible meadows. All of these are things that long-term are what Cheltenham hopefully will lead in among our neighboring, in coordination with Abington, with Jenkintown, with Lower Moreland. That we all need to do this because the science tells us, even though there's deniers of it, that Mother Nature's grumpy. So we have to use the land smarter and probably less density in some ways. So we gotta use less energy to do more, and so geothermal is one of those things. Using gray water so we get a second or even third use out of that. So if we're doing swimming pools and things like that, I think it was with Brooke that had mentioned her recognizing that in certain countries, sinks where one washes hands immediately drain into toilets so that they can be used to flush once we've washed our hands. So it's a second use right away without really needing to have, big retention basins, but we probably need those too. So I've said enough.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight and listening to our presentation and your questions and comments. Do you have anybody else? No, okay. So we will take your comments and questions, and we have the questions that are in the chat, and we will compile them and digest them, and we look forward to your comments, any other future comments you might have over the next 30 days or so. And please get the word out to your neighbors and friends so that they can find the link to the information. It'll be up in the next day or so. And review it and talk about it and let us know your thoughts so we can use that for future decision making. This is a really interesting and important opportunity for the community. And we really want to make sure that your facilities are what meets the needs of the community. So thank you very much and have a great evening.